I'm going to be talking about the trends for 2023 that we can look forward to. But the professor earlier, talked about looking into the horizon for the next big wave that you'd like to ride, right? And if you are to, look into that horizon about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you'd probably see that particular logo over there. For those that are not familiar, that's very similar to the logo for the ship, the wheel that's used to control the direction of a ship. But it's also the logo of Kubernetes. Kubernetes, as you know, is a new operating environment for applications in a cloud native infrastructure, right? So that was 3 years ago, right? But today we are here to talk about the new frontiers. What are we looking at? And in putting together this presentation, I've had the pleasure of attending this event about 3 or 4 times now, 3 or 4 years in a row. First time presenting though, and I've tried to collate as much of historical information as well to understand, what are the small waves and what are the big waves, right? Historically. So with that in mind, something from last year, right? We had people talking about the race to become digitally smart, right? Martin, the gentleman from KPMG earlier, talked about, the need to actually become smart when it comes to digital transformation as a whole, right? And not just doing it for the sake of doing it, understanding what your customer wants, et cetera, right? And let's be frank, digital transformation today is underpinned a lot by cloud computing. We cannot deny that, right? It's inherent that cloud computing and digital transformation are connected at the hip, right? So, going back to last year, right? We had a lot of people, and for those who were there last year, you'd remember a lot of people were saying in the fireside chat, different sessions, about the need to become a cloud-first enterprise, right? A lot of people were saying, we've set our agenda, we know where we want to go, and we're going to be a cloud-first enterprise, right? And that led to what we call the great replatforming. So you had people trying to, replatform the applications to run in a more cloud-native world, right? But there are challenges associated with that. First one being the lack of developer skills. There was a very interesting fireside chat and a fireside discussion between George Njuguna of Safaricom and Jack Ngare of Microsoft at the time, if I remember correctly, around developer skills, right? Around talent, right? And if you think about it, it's inherent that we are facing a shortage in that department, not just here in Kenya, but globally, right? Secondly, there's the weight of enterprise apps. Enterprise apps are not designed to be cloud native, right? So you have to refactor them, replatform them, etc. And finally, you had this, IT organizations typically are structured in a way that they operate on centricity, on centralization of functions, etc. And with the great replatforming, you have this fragmented operations and security. You have different platforms requiring different ways that you secure them and the way they operate. All right. So essentially, cloud first became cloud chaos. Right? I don't know how to say that in Swahili. All right. But that's just a minor bump on your way to become cloud smart, on you as enterprises on your way to become cloud smart, right? Now, what's the difference between cloud chaos and cloud smart, right? So the first one obviously is trying to centralize and accelerate the speed at which you develop and put out applications to your customers. Understand what your customers want from you and accelerate that journey from inception to a final product that you put out there for your customers. Your customers can be your internal customers or your external customers, right? Secondly, you need to start looking at a consistent enterprise infrastructure, right? No longer silos. If you remember in the past, organizations that were IBM were purely IBM. organizations that were Oracle were purely Oracle. HPE, people used to be called, they are a Dell shop, they are an HPE shop, right? Where did that come from, right? It's because of this siloed, infrastructure. That gradually changed, and today it doesn't matter, who your hardware provider is. You look at what brings value to you. The hardware, vendor adds value definitely, but it's changed quite a bit, right? And finally, you're looking at a frictionless experience across multiple platforms in the way your users, both internal and external, access those applications, right? You want to make it as easy as possible. As Martin said, your customers are telling you, don't make me shop around, right? Give it to me. You understand what I want. Just give it to me, right? Make it frictionless, right? So, I'm not as good at the numbers as the gentleman from KPMG. That's your job, right? To be good with the numbers. Nancy, you hear that? He's not that good, with the numbers. He said that. All right. So, but 68% of all new enterprise apps, right, are now cloud native, right? 87% of enterprises today are multi-cloud. You might have heard of this word called multi-cloud before, right? It's an organization that runs applications across multiple clouds. It's as simple as that, right? The concept of cloud is not new, and the concept of multi-cloud is not new either, right? You have organizations that run some applications on Microsoft Azure. There's some applications that run on AWS, and some that run internally, right? So essentially, that's a multi-cloud enterprise, right? So essentially, people started thinking cloud, hyperscaler. That's the first thing that comes when you think about cloud, right? Azure, Google Cloud, AWS, right? But essentially, that changed to three particular aspects, right? So the first one was private cloud. That's your internal environment. The on-premise, the traditional on-premise environment, as we call it, right? Your public cloud, and finally, the edge. The edge is where you take your applications, that compute infrastructure and that power closer to the users and your customers, right? But that's also changing now, right? So essentially, you have multiple public cloud providers that everybody wants to use. You've got AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Huawei Cloud, Oracle, IBM Cloud, and then you have this concept that's now coming up called sovereign cloud. Because of data residency requirements, this concept of sovereign cloud has come up over the last year or two. This is a cloud environment that's more local to a region, that ensures that data does not move out of the region, right? So there's a lot of emphasis on data residency and data sovereignty, right? So that's also coming up, and you'll be surprised. There are actually about 6 or 7 sovereign cloud providers in Kenya today, right? So you've got this 5 different areas that you need to look at. You have applications that are running across probably 5 different areas, right? And you're looking to get the best value out of each and every one of them, right? But essentially, you're going back to cloud chaos, right? You have siloed infrastructure management and security, right? You also have siloed development environments, and that's a challenge, right? If somebody is used to working and pushing his application, if a developer is used to working, pushing his applications onto, say, Amazon EKS, for example, right? And you tell them, okay, now I need you to shift to something else. They'll be like, no, but I'm so used to that. Why would I want to shift to something else, right? And he doesn't care it's good for the business. He doesn't care it's good for the balance sheet of the business, right? He's more concerned about what's easy and good for him. And that's a challenge, right? It slows down your general speed as a business, right? So, you need to look at a different way. If you are to extrapolate those 5 cloud environments and, upwards, you got the users, the different connections, etc., the different access methodologies, things really get complicated, right? So a new way is required to think about it, and that's one of the trends, one of the big trends that we need to watch out for next year, right? This abstraction layer across the different cloud environments for enterprises, right? So, this can be in sort of 5 different areas. The first one being the app platform, the way you build, run, and manage your applications in a consistent manner across the different cloud providers, no matter where it runs, shouldn't matter. There's a single way to build, run, and manage your applications. Second one being the way you generally manage your infrastructure, right? Cloud management. That needs to change as well. The third one is about the infrastructure, the cloud and edge infrastructure, the underlying infrastructure components around it. There has to be what is termed as operational simplicity around that. Fourth, network and security, right? It's important that your security and network infrastructure is consistent, right? The problem that happens when you don't have that, you start having gaps. Yeah? And a black hat will tell you, mate, a gap is what is the holy grail for them in any environment, right? That gap right there that might seem insignificant to you is probably what can cost your company a lot of money. So it's important to ensure those gaps are filled and that you have a consistent approach to networking and security. And finally, the way you access those particular applications, right? So, as I said, right? So this terminology of being able to provide a consistent approach across the different cloud services, the way you build, operate, access, and secure any application on any cloud, right? This is the terminology that you need to watch for cross-cloud services. Going into 2023 and 2024, we're going to see a lot of cross-cloud services coming up, right? All right. Now, one of the things, I don't know if you saw, on the far right bottom of that slide was edge computing. The professor earlier touched a bit on it. I saw this particular wording on Martin's slide as well. Edge computing, right? In 2022, this year, $176 billion were forecasted to be spent on edge computing this year alone, right? There are a multitude of use cases around it, right? Some we know of, some we probably don't know of yet. We can think about a Tesla being a form of edge computing, a Tesla car, a connected car, right? You can think about real-time streaming as a form of edge computing, not from you as a user perspective, but from the guy who is streaming. They might be at a remote location. I was actually watching the World Cup match yesterday between Argentina and Saudi Arabia, and Argentina. Saudi. No, nothing wrong with that. just to put things into perspective, Brazil in Abeba. Brazil. So now, there's a lot of use cases around the edge, right? So, and there's different ways to look at it. You look at, the new way of retailing, for example. You look at IoT gateways. Did you know that, coming back to the football analogy, the ball they use in this World Cup has a tiny microchip embedded in the center of that ball, right? That enables them to make those decisions around VAR, around offsides, and even the goal line technology that they use. That's all dependent on a small microchip that's embedded within that ball, and that connects to multiple different IoT gateways on the roof of a stadium, right? So that's an example of what people are doing with edge computing, really, right? Now, the thing about edge computing is, one of the things is it's a closed loop feedback system, right? You see something, a decision has to be made for things to progress, right? If you're driving a Tesla, or rather, if the Tesla is driving itself and you're sitting on it, you're sitting inside it, right? And it senses something, it senses a block, it senses somebody crossing the road, it cannot wait for it to take that data, send it back to the data center, and wait for a response from the data center. Should I knock this person over or should I stop? Right? You cannot wait. Things have to, are quick. So it's a closed loop feedback system, right? You look at warehouses, nowadays that need that computing power within that warehouse, right? Or factory floors that need that computing power right on the floor rather than on the data center, inside the data center, right? So again, this is an area, this is a trend that we're going to see from 2023 going forward. A lot more of it. I had mentioned this as well about 2 years ago at CIO, at a similar summit, the online one, the virtual one that we had in 2020. And at that time, I said, we are moving away from data centers to centers of data, right? And this is just an extension of that terminology, right? So essentially, you're going to have all these different edge locations literally being centers of data. And it's important, this is a wave that you need to ride on to take advantage of, right? As the professor said, you need to pick the right wave for your organization, right? All right, fine. Now, that's essentially led to a new type of application coming up, right? What they call edge native application. So you have cloud native applications and edge native applications. Cloud native applications are totally different from edge native applications, right? The challenges and their requirements are totally different. And look, we can obviously spend hours and hours on this, right? But again, I was told I only have 1 hour 40 minutes, right? So I have to be quick. So, all right. Have you seen this slide before? Have you seen this meme before? Right? So that's what's happening to enterprises now, right? They finally got onto cloud native applications and boom, edge native applications. So, all right, cool. Now, the next slide, we're going to be talking about cloud smart networking and security as the next big trend as well. But before I move on, I've got a picture that I would like to share with you that I don't know if anybody's familiar with what's happening in this picture. Show of hands, please. Melala. Show of hands. Anybody familiar with what's happening in this picture? Nobody? What's happening is you're just racking an appliance, a network appliance. I'm not sure if that's a load balancer or an application. I don't even know. There's the F5 logo. I don't mean to trash F5 or anything. It's just there. It's just the only image I could get around this, right? But this is something everybody who's worked in IT is familiar with, right? Racking a network appliance. But what happens when you start running out of capacity on the network appliance? Do you go to this? Because I can tell you, you know what, that vendor, and again, once again, guys, that F5 logo, I don't mean to, it's just the only image I could get. It's not, right? I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody. But yeah, is that what you're going to do next? Get a bigger appliance? And what happens when that runs out? Are you going to go here? You're not, right? So you need to change, and different mindset needs to come into play, right? What we call cloud smart networking and security, right? So traditionally, you have this perimeter security, you have endpoint security, and you have data center security, right? But what happens when you have your data center and the guy who you don't want in your data center, Danny, what happens then? He's in there. What do? You have no way of knowing, he's even in the data center. Or if you know if he's in the data center, what is doing inside that data center? What we call lateral movement, right? So again, lateral security, and again, another big trend that we need to take care of, or rather we need to look into 2023 and beyond, is lateral security as a new battleground in information and cybersecurity, right? It's as most security vendors, including most of them who are up as sponsors over here, will tell you later on, a breach is inevitable. A breach will happen whether you like it or not, right? It's what happens after the breach. It's how fast you're able to recover, how far you're able to trace those footsteps of that attacker inside your data center, right? So lateral security, this movement inside your data center, that's a new battleground. Now, traditionally, you had virtual machines running in an enterprise on a server, and the consolidation ratio wasn't very high, right? You could have a network tap, and you could see a bit of traffic moving in there, etc., right? So you had a bit of lateral visibility inside your enterprise, right? But what happens with the compute infrastructure that we have right now, where you can run literally hundreds of VMs or containers on a single node? What happens? You cannot look at that traffic from a single point of view, from a single appliance or whatever, right? So there needs to be a change around that, right? And that's what we are referring to as lateral security, being able to see all connections and conversations. It's about being able to distribute that power, that security appliance power, across your entire enterprise, across all your VMs, across containers, in the way you deploy that infrastructure, right? Think about it. What if you could, and this is something I don't have over here, but something I know for a fact is a trend coming up, probably not 2023, but beyond that, 2024, because a lot of the major vendors are working on this, smart NICs, right? What if you could offload the security and networking overhead from your server onto that PCIe NIC card in your server, right? What if you could do that, right? That leaves a lot more room, about 15%, if I remember correctly, a lot more room for the workloads that critically matter to the organization, right? The core workloads. All right. So again, to summarize, 4 key trends that we need to watch out. Cloud smart enterprises, the word cloud smart. Secondly, cross-cloud services. I don't even know how could I say that in Swahili, lakini ni sawa. Edge computing, and finally, cloud smart networking and security. And with that, I'd like to say thank you for your time.